Welcome ABDers, first video of its kind. Call this this series is The Thoughts of Jeff. The first thing I want to talk to you guys about is the work that I've been doing around what I'm calling organizing for uncertainty. I'm going to give a caveat here. This is based on the following book. The book's called Organizing for Complexity, How to Get Life Back into the Work and Build High-Performing Organizations by Neil Flagging. I can't say his name, I apologize, but it's super small. I read it in about an hour. It's got some really good stuff in it. And what we've done is we've integrated this into our agile ecosystem design stuff. So let's talk about how. So, organizing for uncertainty. The interesting thing about organizing for uncertainty is it fundamentally divides you or asks you to divide your organization into a couple of different layers. Instead of a hierarchy, we're going to go and imagine the organization as a circle. But let's just take one portion of that circle for now. And the first thing organizing for uncertainty asks you to do is define the market. Okay, so what do we mean by the market? Anybody that is outside your organization. That can include partners, vendors, suppliers, and of course the usual suspects, users, customers. So if you're going to engage in some really cohesive organizational design with a customer, start by just mapping out what all of these things are. Maybe a paragraph or two, that's about it. The next thing you want to do is you see this circle right here. There's a nice thick line we can call the identity. The good thing is almost everybody in Agile by Design already knows how to establish an identity for an organization or a subset of an organization. You guys all know how to use business model canvases. That belongs in the identity. That's a big piece. Something that we probably don't spend enough time doing, but we're starting to do now in a lot of our agile transitions. Shared values. You'll also hear things like culture book. Organizational letter to ourselves. So, we're all pretty good at establishing identity, but you can see the power of saying, who are we as an organization? This is our market. This is how we describe our identity. And then the next most important thing you want to do, and by the way, when you're putting this together, you really do an outside-in style of design. You say, now that we know what our market is, and we know what our identity is, let's go and divide the organization into a couple of layers. I'm going to call this layer, the one out here, the edge. Just to make it easy, I'll go here. This is the edge. This is the identity. So we've got the edge that we want to talk about. And in the edge, you're going to have classic teams. And only these teams are allowed to engage with the market. How can you come up with some of these teams? You guys already know how to do this. We might have product teams. We might have experience teams. You might have objectives or outcomes. Right? Anything that you can do that makes a cross-functional, value-oriented team belongs in the edge. What you then want to do is start talking about what's the opposite of the edge is the center. And you start defining teams in the center. What are the obvious kind of cohorts that you would see in here? HR, finance, legal, management belongs in here as well. So any type of management. Now, the one thing that I found was a limitation in the book Organizing for Complexity is it kind of stops here and sort of says, hey, figure out your skills, draw connections. But the kind of organizations we work in, you can't do this for an entire organization. You don't have permission to. You know, you're not working with the head of the whole organization. You're typically working with a unit or a department. So what we've done is we've said you need to start establishing context boundaries. You guys have probably heard of bounded contexts. So basically we might say, here's a context boundary, here's another context boundary, here's another one, and this, you know, is a particular mission or an outcome. And all the teams that belong in that mission go over here. Here's another mission. Here's another mission, basically. Then what you can also say is typically missions, take a line of business, you know, in a large bank, are going to have their own center that they're going to deal with. So I create another layer. So imagine that this is a mission, mission 1. This is a center that belongs to that mission. This is the real center of the enterprise. If I was in Scotia Bank, I would say, hey, this is global business payments right here. Here are all the teams inside of global business payments. Here's all the common teams that are working and helping global business payments. And finally, I've got Scotia Bank off in the center. You might also say, hey, I need to put more context boundaries within here as well, because you might have submissions or sub-teams going on. So then once you've done that, we've got all kinds of edge teams here. You might have very specific market customers coming out. I'll draw it a little bit easier so you can see the context boundaries. And this might have its own set of market interactions, its own edge teams, its own center, all relying on this global center over here. In fact, one of the things that we've been doing, and this is something we recently did at Shoppers, is Shoppers has a mission. I'm going to just draw the center again. They've got a center and it's called Loblaws. They've got another center out here that applies to Shoppers. This center does not apply, but it's sort of like an affiliate. Within Shoppers, they've got the program that we're running, which is called Health Watch. This is our client right here. So now this is, you know, the deep center, almost the black hole, so to speak. This is a center that's closer to the edge, closer to the teams. Finally, this is the program's management layer. And this is, so call that the Health Watch Center. And these are various missions. Mission 1. For example, they have store features. They have provincial enablement. In other words, rolling out things to stores province by province. They have digital messaging, because there's a whole health messaging center that they've got to do. So these are missions. And inside them, you've got teams. We are in the process of helping them define a center. For instance, platform engineering could be one of those things. The agile coaches could be another one. And they share a common market. We've been defining these by saying your market has a set of things that they want to get done. And we've actually been trying to order them in priority. The thing closest to the team is the highest priority, and the thing farthest away has the lowest priority. And then we've tried to then subdivide these up based on all of these objectives that are happening. So we've been actually using this view to do what I'll call some backlog mapping. And then what would be powerful about this is if we were now to go to the rest of the shoppers and say, what's your market and how do you look? You might realize, oh, this market element over here shares the same thing over there. We need to go and collapse this boundary. It doesn't make sense. But that's a topic for another day. For now, we're doing this in a very localized way. But you could imagine this being super powerful where you had the entire organization drawn and you were looking at all the market elements that it was engaging with. You started saying, what are the outcomes across all those things? And do we have the right edge teams supported by the right central layers? And you start looking at, kind of value being pulled into the organization and then people coming out to the edges to support that value and doing it. So what's worth noting is this: if you can't read my chicken scratch and you want to actually look at this in more details, go into Notions, look for organizing for uncertainty. We've got a page up, we've got a PowerPoint that talks about all this, and then give either the shoppers people a call or myself, and I'll walk you through the framework. That's it. Stop. Are we recording?
Yeah, I'll edit it out.
Yeah, and then we'll just do whatever. So hang on, let me just, okay, amazing. Okay. Oh, what happened? Mila, sorry, Daddy's recording something.